Hey there everybody, Dr. Impact here again with our second episode of Dr. Impact's Quarantine Comic Prescription. So, as we said in our last video, we're going to be doing these once a week. This is jumping in on the new to you comic book day movement, I guess, while we're all sitting here quarantined during our stay-at-home and shelter-in-place orders. So this week, for the Dr. Impact's Quarantine Comic Prescription, I read all 12 issues of Deathmatch from Boom Studios. It's by Paul Jenkins, who's a great writer, and Carlos Magno. Hope I pronounced that correctly, who I've never seen anywhere else, or if I have, I didn't realize it. So this is the first thing that I'm really aware of him. The interesting thing about Deathmatch is it's very similar for me as it was for the End League, in the sense that I started buying these books as they were coming out. I want to say somewhere around 2012 or 13, maybe, somewhere around there. And I liked it. I thought it was an interesting concept. But, as the series went on, it started to get a little confusing. And then, money being what it is, I started to just kind of fall back off of it. And I ended up missing the last 4 issues. And by then, I had only read the first, I think, 5. So I thought, well, I'll just wait and I'll just find all the other ones in back issue bins, and I'll just read all 12, when I've got them in one sitting. Well, it took me forever to find issue 12. So I finally got it about, about 5 or 6 months ago. And I have finally now read the whole thing. I read it in 2 days. I split it up. I read the first 6 yesterday and then the second 6 today. And I gotta say, I'm glad I read it. This is populated with a bunch of superheroes that we're made to believe already exist, and they're all sort of based on iconic characters in various ways. In fact, the 2 main characters, one is Benny Boatwright. You gotta love the comic book alliteration there, and he is the Dragonfly. And the other main character is Sable. And Sable, she is a dark and brooding, shrouded kind of detective of sorts. And so obviously they're very much Spider-Man and Batman, who are our 2 focal characters in this book. And there are other characters that, there are 32, actually, total characters in this book. The premise of Deathmatch is that 32 superheroes and supervillains, both, which they refer to as Supes and Fears. And then there's a third faction, Neutrals. So there are Supes, Fears, and Newts. And 32 of them in total wake up in this installation. And the next thing you know, they have to, 2 at a time, get brought in and fight to the death in the deathmatch arena. They don't really know what they're doing there, so that's the mystery of the whole book. And I don't want to go into too much detail about that because I don't want to spoil any of that if anybody wants to go out and read it. I will say, though, that when they get transported into the actual arena, the gladiatorial arena, while in there, they remember what it is that they're doing there. So that's very interesting, and that's kind of always there. The cool thing about this is that in the back of every issue is kind of a playoff bracket system. And so you get to kind of see where all the matches are gonna lead up to, and that's very fun. And the other thing that they do in the back of every issue is they take 4 characters and they give bios for these characters, almost as if it's excerpts from a Who's Who book. And each bio even breaks down not only their origin, but it also tells you what issue they made their first appearance in. So there's a lot of fictitious comic book titles and a lot of fun, you know, meta kind of fun with the book where that's concerned. And the characters are very cool, and some of them are very easily recognizable. True Man is clearly Captain America. Meridian is very much Superman. And then there are others that, you know, aren't quite so easy to figure out. There's a character, Manchurian, and I'm not sure. I think the Manchurian might have been some sort of an answer to Reed Richards. The art is amazing, and boy, each issue moves like a roller coaster. It's exciting, and you get answers throughout, and it's you know, the characters are very cool and very good fight scenes, so that's all great. The downside of it is extremely confusing in the second half. The last 6 issues, and I have to say, thank God I read it all in one sitting, because if I was reading those issues as they were coming out monthly, I probably would have been lost and not known what the hell was going on. So I will have to say that if you decide to hunt this down and read it, either get all of the issues at one time or get yourself a trade. The biggest downside to the whole thing, and I don't want to say exactly what is the problem here, but because again, I don't want to spoil it, but the biggest downside I see to the whole thing is I don't understand quite what the point was. I literally just finished reading it, so maybe it has to sit with me for a little while. Maybe maybe I have to let it sink in, and maybe I'll come up with an answer, you know, in time. But I thought it was incredibly cool until about halfway through the last issue, and then it was kind of like, well, okay, if that's what this is, and if that's what we're doing, why? What are we saying? Are we trying to establish a new superhero universe using this? Are we trying to say something about comic books and about superheroes, or what makes a hero? Because if so, that's kind of muddled. So I'm not quite sure what the point of it was, but I'm very glad that I read it. If you like Paul Jenkins and his work, and you know, keep in mind that he is the creator of The Sentry, and there's a lot of similarities here between this book and the stuff in The Sentry, specifically with the character of Meridian and his evil counterpart, Anti-Meridian, which is very similar to Sentry and the Void over at Marvel. But anyway, if you like Paul Jenkins stuff, you probably would really like this. If you're one of those people who has a problem with comics that make you try to figure out what is going on between the panels, then this book may not be for you. I think that there's nothing wrong with that, and I love that in a comic. I love a comic that can make me think, and this one certainly does. My biggest issue, again, is that the ending, I think, is a little too unclear as to what the point was, but yeah, so yeah, that was it was interesting, and you know, it quenched my new comic thirst for the week, I suppose you could say. So anyway, so that's it. Tune in next week, and keep your eye out for other Pull List members and their videos.